Hi guys. I managed to get a day off work today, although I have to work the weekend. Um, I just went to the condo the other day and picked up my scooter. This thing's been sitting in the lot for about 3 years without being moved. Um, it's not a bad little ride. It's 150cc, and it's definitely deteriorated a little bit since I bought it, but it goes about 55 miles an hour max, up a slight hill, and it's immune. I mean, it's like totally invisible to police, and it gets like 90 miles per gallon. And the reason I bought it is because in certain situations, like if we had another oil shock, or if we had an economic situation where gas became expensive, and $4 a gallon isn't expensive, by the way. That's fairly cheap. But anyway, I broke the valve stem off back here, so I had to do a little ingenuity to get it together enough to ride it home. I took a piece of hose and jammed it in there, and then jammed the broken valve stem in, pumped it up to about 35, and managed to drive it home. Not bad. I got to get that fixed though. Have to dismount the wheel for that. And also I've got a nice little fuel leak in here somewhere. I think the carburetor on the float on the carburetor may have sank. So fuel is coming out the vent. But anyway, if we had a situation where gas was expensive, I would be able to ride this scooter. I'd be able to go to the gas lines and use my ration card or whatever and fill my gas tank, and then basically I would be able to run this thing for a month, commute for a month, maybe a little less than a month, for what just is in my car's gas tank, and then I could use the rest for the wood chipper and various chainsaws and stuff like that. So handy thing to have, and it's not cool at all. It's geeky as absolutely can be, but who cares? I'm a MGTOW. Underneath this seat, when this little thing is in, it's this little tub here, and inside here, basically I can get 2 bags of groceries in here easy, 1.5, and then 1 right under here. So, and then ride home very efficiently. Good times. And I've only got about 700 miles on it, but still, it's a nice little thing to have just in case. I'm also doing a little work on this little leafing chainsaw. That's always fun. The big chainsaw is all well and good, but sometimes you need something for small stuff. The reason I am making this video is not really to show you my scooter here. It's to talk about the way things used to be. Let's get on our Wayback Machine and look at marriage, right? Duh, hello. Of course you knew I was going to get to that. But basically, at one time, marriage made a lot of sense, right? You would have an extended family, or a little bit like that TV show from the 70s, I think it is, called The Waltons. It's about this sort of farm-ish family, and they had kids, and then they had the main married couple, and then they had the elderlies, right? Which was the parents of the guy, right? The husband. And in the past, people would generally I'm going to sit on my scooter when I make this. But anyway, people in the past, they would tend to not pick their marriage partners. They would actually we all are pretty aware that that people would just, their parents would pretty much arrange it all. And before the Waltons, even you had things like in the 1800s, there were actually like dowries and stuff, right? What would happen was a family would raise a daughter, and they would want to raise her well, because if they didn't, they wouldn't get a good price for her. Basically, it was traditional to compensate the family for raising the daughter, and then a little bit of cashola would go in to sort of compensate, and then in return they'd get a good woman, and a good wife and all that good stuff. In fact, at one time they used to call them good wives. But anyway, and it was in the best interests of the parents to pick a good daughter, or a good wife for their son. Because if they didn't, then they would of course be in a situation where they would have a exploding family situation, and then their retirement was basically jeopardized. So women, they have a nasty hypergamous streak, a nasty self-centered streak, and I think most guys are aware of that. And basically but the older woman it would be in her best interest to use all of her intuition and all of her feminine diplomacy or ability to understand what other people, where they're coming from, their manipulative powers, to pick a good, stable woman for the son, right? Now, and then of course they would have a good family situation, and then they would get older, and then their daughters would grow up and they would get married off, and if they had a good reputation as a good, stable family, people would be more likely to pay them a little cashola for the daughters, and the daughters would be less likely to get pregnant from some guy down the street who couldn't support them, right? Well, and then basically they would have a whole second generation coming, or third generation coming up, and the parents, they would start throttling back on the hardest activities, such as like baling hay and stuff like that. And they as you get older, believe me, I'm starting to figure this out now that I'm 48. As you get older, your body starts to deteriorate. You start to become less able to handle like 16 hours of freaking back-breaking labor, right? So having somebody else around, a younger couple, your son and his wife and their kids, was a real benefit, right? But anyway, then the parents, the grandparents, they would sort of change. They would be, at the same time, the parents would really be into it, like really production, really producing. The grandparents could throttle back a bit and instruct the third generation how to sew this if it's a girl, or how to cook this if it's a girl, how to fix a pitchfork if it's a son or a boy. And it wasn't a perfect situation, right? Sometimes the couple, they just wanted to, they didn't really have all that love shit that Hallmark is blathering on about every 3 minutes, and the Lifetime television network, every time you turn around, they're all blah 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 blah, love, right? And I'm almost thinking that is something of a big false thing, right? You got basically people are in a situation there where they just wanted to make ends meet and grow their crops and harvest their chickens and keep their lives ticking over. Whereas nowadays, women, they're all, especially women, and to some extent the guys, although we're starting to get wise to it, all of that love tends to be more, it's just infatuation, right? The first stages of a relationship, the first stages of a couple, there's this serious bonding chemicals thing going on. And then women, of course, seem to think that that's supposed to last forever, and if it doesn't, there's something wrong. Well, that's just not the way it works. And Hallmark and freaking Lifetime have done a disservice to a lot of women because they actually believe this shit, right? And so it could get real bad for them. And obviously it has, because as soon as the freaking infatuation chemicals wear off, she ass launches the husband from the house and seizes the assets and feels betrayed and anger and massively pissed off at the husband for somehow not providing this freaking crazy infatuation stage for fucking ever. And it's unfortunate that happens, yeah. But we've all covered that. We know all about that. But let's go into a little bit about what it was for a guy, right? Say if you're a professional guy, right, and you are perhaps away from home, right? So you're not living with your parents anymore. Back in the day, it was not a big deal for a young man to live with his parents. If they weren't married yet. But if he wasn't around, or if he was like somewhere else in the country working on a mine or something, that became pretty popular back in the early 1800s when the mobility really started ramping up. But those guys, they were in kind of bad shape if they weren't married. Let me see if this camera's still going. Yeah. For example, there were no microwave meals. There were very little like refrigeration, and basically there was no overnight restaurants. There was no 24/7 grocery stores, and also alteration shops. They may have existed in larger cities. But people mostly sewed their own clothes, and in fact, there's a certain kind of flower. I think it grows in the Northwest, but they were called bachelor buttons, and I think they still are called bachelor buttons. And it's because men who weren't able to, for some reason, weren't able to sew their clothes even to the point of just sewing another button on. They would take the empty button loop, and they would just put one of those flowers through it, right? Partially as an indicator that, help, I need somebody to sew my clothes, and possibly as an indicator that he's single, right? So that some lady who wanted an actual family situation could become sort of symbiotic with him and do the marriage thing, right? Now, also at that time, it was difficult for guys if they were single, because if they had an employer, if they were looking for a job and they were single, they were oftentimes not really taken seriously by the employer. They would think that they would be unstable and just about ready to fly off and not be there dependably for the company. And the result is they often didn't get hired. And when it was time to get promoted, if the guy was around, even if he knew his job very well, you would have a situation where they just wouldn't trust the guy, right? And if he was single, there would be all kinds of things about him. People would be thinking, well, maybe he's gay or something. And that was like a huge no-no back then. But basically, it was a situation where you couldn't really get ahead if you were single, and you couldn't really, because unless you somehow managed to know how to sew, which mothers generally didn't teach their sons how to sew. You had to figure it out for yourself. Basically, you would end up looking like a bum because you wouldn't be able to sew your own clothes. And then, of course, cooking was a much more long-term, laborious thing with the cooking on a wood-fired stove or over a fire pit or something like that. Guys would actually, cooking was a much more labor-intensive thing. So guys who were not married wouldn't be nourished as well because they would just slam something together as best they could after their 12-hour workday. And they really needed somebody to help them out, an actual wife back when wives were a practical thing, right? So it wasn't necessarily a perfect world. Life was brutal and short, and for women, childbirth was like a Russian roulette, like one bullet in an 8-cylinder gun, maybe. If you happened to get the wrong one, you'd end up getting killed, right? Women died in doing that sort of thing all the time. Wow. And of course, everybody can contrast that with what's happening today, with the breakdown of the family and all that. But there is a certain number of benefits to living in a modern society, right? Nowadays, with so many women, like in the 70s especially, they burned their bras and saying, "I am woman, hear me roar," and then ass launched their husbands from their family, right? And shattered the family and said, "I can do it all myself," right? Meanwhile, she seizes the assets and seizes his income, and it's a nasty business. But amidst all that carnage, we've got a situation now where if you're single, you can still get ahead in a career. You can become an expert like I have as a diesel mechanic, and you can succeed. You can be promoted even if you're not married. So that is a benefit. It would be nice if we could still have the safety factor. We could still be safe and still do the whole marriage thing. That would be awesome. I might have enjoyed that. I might not have, though. But it would have been, there are pros and cons. Well, hey, check this out. This is just neither here nor there. This is my tool tray that I use at work. I just happened to grab it and take it home. I have a project I want to do today. But basically, I like to throw all of my tools that are really commonly accessed, and that way when a truck breaks down out on the road somewhere and they say, "Vention, go get it," I can just go, bam, haul that puppy out and grab maybe a multimeter and jump in the service truck, and 9 out of 10 times I can fix the problem. And then if I can't, the tow truck shows up and hauls it off to the shop. Good times. I got standard, metric, extensions, neodymium magnets with little screwdriver bits, and those are extensions, adapters, hose tool for getting hoses off, ratchet, nice extended ratchet. I do love this ratchet. Good times. Oh, well, I'll stop boring you. If you're not a mechanic, that probably wouldn't have interested you. So, basically, I'm just trying to say that, yes, the family system has been shattered. Yes, it's a lot of chaos. And, yeah, it's too bad that we can't trust women anymore. But at least we can still work. We can work now, and we can get ahead in our careers, and we can make a good deal of money, and we can live a prosperous life if we choose our career correctly and choose one that's compatible with us. And you can have a pretty darn nice life. And you've got microwave meals and dishwashers and microwave ovens and just automatically cooking stoves and crock pots, and yeah, we are doing pretty darn good, honestly. So it's not all bad. Later.